Todd Monken dropped some hints yesterday about how Lamar Jackson could be utilized in this new look Ravens offensive is for the 2023 season. We talk about that and much more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, and we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here with us on this Thursday schedule release day, making us your first listen each and every day. You can subscribe to us for free in audio form and in video form. So 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens. And here with us today on this Thursday is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. It was an exciting day today. Tonight, we're going to hear the schedule be revealed here on Locked On Ravens. We'll be live streaming after the fact, so be sure to check out all of that. But I first want to talk about what Todd Monken had to say. The Ravens put on a football school where a lot of their players showed up. Lamar Jackson was one of those who did not. But Todd Monken spoke and had a lot to say about the offense and Lamar Jackson's potential usage in the offense and dropped a couple of hints. He was asked a question about how Lamar, no quarterbacks run more than him in his first 5 seasons. And with the offense, the pieces now that they've surrounded Lamar with, is that maybe going to be less of a thing? And Todd Monken talks a little bit about how it goes back to the players that they have. And, the more talent you have around your quarterback, the less he has to take on the burden. And, you're trying to get others the football. So, he said it kind of answers itself, and then talked a little bit about Lamar further on in his career. But Q, do you think that we're going to see a lot less of Lamar running this year?
I think for what Todd Monken is trying to say is that you don't alter genius when you have it. You try to build around it and enhance it and protect it. We have a generationally talented player who obviously is the highest paid player in the NFL, and he is Mr. Electric. With that said, I think what Greg Roman did was he went to the well so many times that this league also does the impossible, which is adapt. It adapts quickly and it adapts efficiently, and teams started to adapt to some of the ways in which the Greg Roman offense was called. And so you had these clues and tips of, okay, he's going to predominantly run it to the 3 receiver side, or there's a tight end that's going to motion over, and Patrick Ricard, who is the hybrid tight end / fullback or the H-back. And now you're giving away where the ball is going to be, and that formation and that understanding and, those type of things put you in a position where the element of surprise is taken away. Todd Monken was brought in to not take away his talent, but to pretty much disguise the way in which the offense is going to attack a defense.
Yeah, and I completely agree where now you have the ability with Todd Monken. It's very clear with the history that he has had that he's going to put guys in the best position with their skill set in mind. So, Patrick Ricard, slants, you put him in the slot. We're not going to see a lot of that. Hopefully we don't see any of it. But now you have a player in Lamar who, at the same time, there is so much that goes on with him because we know he's dynamic with his legs. We know what he can do with his arm as well. He is both a good thrower and a good runner. But it does beg the question, because I'm very interested to see just how much he runs this year. I would expect it to be less because you're trying to get the ball into these players' hands. But I think it would be a disservice to Lamar, to the fan base, to the offense, if you just take that out of his game completely. I don't think Todd Monken is going to do that. But I think if that were to happen, I don't think you want to completely eliminate or partially eliminate where it's not even a factor. I think you still want to use that. But with the weapons that now the Ravens have, it's not necessarily a necessity to have them run Lamar, 15, 20 times a game anymore.
When you look back on when Gary Kubiak took over, with the way Joe Flacco was mobile enough, the stretch outside zone run scheme, they would run it to a tight end side, and he would waggle and boot out to the opposite side away from the run action, and you would have some play action pass patterns behind the defense as they were over pursuing the run, or if they were recognizing it was pass, but they had to do a lot of shifting, and it was very successful. I think when you look at what we're seeing with Lamar Jackson and the potential that I think, Monken can bring to the table, my God, man, if you're going to be a backside, end or linebacker or safety, and you're one-on-one isolated with Lamar, but yet at the same time you have an Isaiah Likely coming across on a deep over, like, you got to pick your poison. And there are ways in which you can scheme Lamar to have options to either run it because he wants to and get big plays from it, or you can also have it where he can take it to the next level and sling it downfield and extend the play. Yeah, there are some talented defenders, and they're going to be looking to hit him. Make no mistake about it. But if you can extend the play, and that is putting pressure on the guy that's covering your skill players, pick your poison. Come on, what are you going to do? So I think Todd Monken realizes that. I think that there are more than enough ways to scheme your quarterback open, to utilize his running abilities, but also accentuate it via the pass. One, I guess, nuance or esoteric way of describing it, cover two man. We have two safeties, and then basically everyone underneath is being covered in man-to-man. That two-man look, you really didn't see a whole lot of, because the way in which you were covering his receivers, it really didn't matter. Like, it was like, okay, fine, you know what, we'll do two-man, or we won't put ourselves in a two-man situation because we're more worried about Lamar than we are anything he can do with his arm on a consistent basis. I think if you put in plays where now it's like, is it Likely? Is it Andrews? Is it Bateman? Is it OBJ? Is it Nelson Aguilar? Is it Duvernay? Who are these guys that we're going to cover? And if big plays are happening, then all of a sudden you're going to see safeties go back deep. If those safeties go back deep and you have that man underneath, woo, that is where Lamar Jackson is going to identify it, recognize it, and now he's off to the races. And you got an offensive line that's a strong offensive line and some strong pieces that I think can really complement what Lamar Jackson is going to do. So, from the esoteric aspect of things, defenses are going to be in a bind.
And that's what it is, where, Todd Monken was also asked about, when you have a quarterback like Lamar, is there a preference for him, whether he surrounds him with guys who are fast on the field for more spacing, or guys who are bigger so you can maybe have those slower defensive matchups where guys have to match those, bigger guys on the field with the heavy personnel aspect. I'm excited to see Q also. Todd Monken was asked about the space of those players, like a Zay Flowers, for example. And, if you have a smaller receiver or a bigger receiver. So he said that there are a lot of creative ways to get Zay Flowers the ball. But then also the up-tempo aspect of things, where I think we saw the Ravens have some success when they went tempo, when they got their guys in a rhythm and didn't let the defense, get the subs they needed, or they were kind of winded. Do you want to see a bit more up-tempo from Todd Monken's offense this year?
So up-tempo, especially in the red zone, is really super effective as long as you are on schedule. So up-tempo in college works really well because oftentimes you're able to just manufacture these first downs. But if you're in the pros and you don't manufacture a first down, you're 3 and out, well, guess who got to go back out there on the field? Your defense. Who's going to be tired? Not their defense, your defense. You got to be up-tempo, but be on schedule. You got to be in a third and medium scenario. Can't be in that third long and expect, okay, we're up-tempoing. Punt team, and you only ran, a handful of plays. Now you run, 13, 14 plays, you're going down the field, you're being very efficient, not holding, you're not getting offsides, you're not getting those silly things. that's where you get into the red zone, and that's where, yeah, now your offensive line is grinding and pounding guys. And I can't emphasize this enough. If you're looking at another year removed from injury, and J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, Justice Hill obviously as well in the mix. The running game, like everybody is talking about pass, 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 pass. But bruh, the running game, watch this offensive line start leaning on some dudes. We wanted more from the red zone. Well, in his MVP year, they were scoring in bunches in the red zone. Every time they stepped in the red zone, that was the funnest I've ever seen, like in all the years of covering Raven football. That was the best and most funnest time I had watching them, because every time they got to the red zone, score, touchdown. Okay, end of the discussion. And that's because of, like, you got to defend the entire width of the field, but at the same time, you got generational talent in Lamar running the ball. Plus, you got some horses that can really be effective running the ball. The red zone, like, get going. Watch what happens in the red zone.
And there's so much for up-tempo too, where Todd Monken talked about up-tempo and said, well, in terms of the installs, game dictates the tempo, players dictate the tempo. So as Todd Monken said, as they move forward, they'll have a better idea in terms of where that presents itself. So I think whether you're running or passing with that up-tempo offense, it's going to give you a lot of different options if you're Todd Monken and that team. But coming up in our second segment, we'll be talking about the Ravens schedule. We'll flip over from Todd Monken. We'll talk about their upcoming trip abroad. We'll talk about that a little bit, as well as what's going on with their opponents as we lean into the schedule reveal day here today on Thursday. So be sure to stay tuned and 10 to dive into on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. And if you're looking for a delicious snack with all the sugar and calories, then you need the best tasting protein bar ever in Built. And if you're like me, you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just a thing for you with Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. And what makes them so good is, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. And I'm not sure how they do it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. They only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you didn't even need to wait to get a box. Years have been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, and now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, while you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream bar, double chocolate bar, coconut puff, and if you're close to a Sam's Club, run and grab a 13-bar box of their flavors such as brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. We are back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Kadri Ismail and Q. The Ravens, their schedule's coming out, full 17-game slate, and they have a bunch of really solid opponents this year. They're playing the whole NFC West as well as the AFC South. Obviously, you get the 3 divisional games each way, both home and away there, and then games against the Lions in there, the Dolphins, the Chargers. So I think a lot of quality opponents, but we have to talk about one game that has already been scheduled. Week 6, the Ravens are going across the pond. They're playing in Tottenham now. Have they played a game abroad before? I must have wiped it from my memory. I don't remember if there was a game there. No, I'm just kidding. They got blown out in 2017 in London. It's a game that many people want to forget. Q, do you feel like this will be a better outcome for the Ravens this time around?
Well, I think now we're in a position where I think, just from a pure football on the field standpoint, you got a lot of new faces. You got some really good, strong, kick butt, take some names later type of guys on defense. And as long as they're going into week 6 healthy, I think this organization, the Ravens organization, they do a fine job of, planning out the details of travel. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah. And in terms of travel, I mean, a really interesting part of this, Q, is Adam Schefter put out it was from Bill Spiros, I think. He put it out, the document, where the Ravens are actually going to travel the 6th most miles this year, 25,442, 28 different time zones for them they'll be traveling through this year. I mean, that's a lot of miles. I'm sure it's going to have some impact. And I mean, look, the Ravens are taking a West Coast trip, or I'm assuming 2 of them, depending on how the schedule is. They're traveling to San Francisco. They're traveling to Arizona. They're going abroad. So obviously you would expect them to have a lot of air miles and just a ton of miles in general. Does that worry you in terms of potential fatigue or different changes they can have with the time zones? How much of a worry is that for you?
From an organization standpoint, you have to be aware of the details that you might not have to be aware of, say, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, who ranks at the bottom of the league as far as the least amount of miles you got to travel. Recovery. The one who recovers the fastest is the one who wins. You don't want to be sitting there being worn down when it comes to the cabin pressure in the plane. And obviously, there are ways to help mitigate that. But again, you look at recovery, you look at this as a violent game, and the ability to get your sleep, the ability to get on the same sleep schedule when it comes to traveling in the same time zone, it all matters. And every advantage you can get, you want to implement it. Teams, they're really good at implementing, whether it be going 2 days before on different trips or staying out. I know there were times where John Harbaugh, he actually stayed out on the West Coast because of the way the schedule was manufactured. I believe it was they had the 49ers and they had the Chargers, and so they kind of had to figure out, how to make it work for themselves. And I know Bill Belichick, over the years when he was in his slot of having West Coast trips, he was out in Arizona, and then I guess his team had to play the Chargers, same thing. So there are strategies that coaches have utilized over the years to help their teams recover. And then at the end of the day, you got to win. I mean, if you can do it and make the adjustments and win, then it was absolutely well worth it. And I know the bottom line is that strategies to help your team recover and also be mentally ready and prepared comes into play and really matters when it talks about traveling.
Yeah, so it's a huge thing. We're going to see how the Ravens handle it this year. I think it's going to be big for them to be able to get used to that because they're going to be traveling a lot of miles this year. But Q, looking at the opponents, I mentioned them. You have teams like I think the 49ers would be a great primetime game. I think you have to have one of both Cincinnati and Pittsburgh in there too. I mean, the reality of the situation in terms of how the NFL determines these primetime games, and it's switched up a little bit, but I think 5 is still the max, if I'm not mistaken, with the ability to get more with slots flexed out. But I don't know. I feel like with the way the Ravens have improved their team, improved their offense, primetime, I think the NFL would do themselves a huge favor by putting the Ravens on a bunch in those slots, because I think you have the excitement of Lamar Jackson. You have the ability that Todd Monken brings with this offense. We saw the defense improve over the course of the past year. I mean, they had a phenomenal year. So to me, I think the NFL, although they might not be the popular pick, you have all the shiny toys like the Mahomes and the Allens and the Burrows. I don't know. I feel like the NFL should make the Ravens one of those primetime darlings.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I really do. I know that the primetime darlings, again, it was, Tom Brady. It was just watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers all of a sudden, was nothing to be the darlings. It's because you had Tom Brady. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is the guy. He rules the roost, and rightly so. I think let this be an opportunity. Not too many primetime games because I'm sitting there covering them, and they get to be a bit much. But at the same time, yeah, let Lamar Jackson get hot and watch the flexing of the schedules come about when it comes to this AFC. And just the intensity of the AFC. I think, Lamar Jackson is absolutely deserving of being on the primetime stage and being one of those darlings, as you would say.
And look, we've seen him perform there plenty of times. The Colts game comes to mind for a lot of people in terms of what he was able to do then, leading that team back. So hopefully they do get 4 or 5 primetime games, but I'm expecting more like 3 to 4 at this point. But coming up in our final segment, we'll be talking a bit about the Ravens and continuously what they can do this offseason. We'll talk about Rock Ya-Sin and his contract. Those details came out and a lot more. So a ton to still dive into here on Locked On Ravens. We're back here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here with Kadri Ismail and Q. I know, the Rock Ya-Sin signing was one that I think was a solid one for a lot of people. It was one that I think gives the Ravens a solid number 2, number 3 cornerback option. He's not necessarily this huge star player, but I think he was what the Ravens needed at that time. Now, Brian McFarland, who actually was on the show yesterday, ended up, putting out on Twitter the details of Rock Ya-Sin's deal here. It's 1 year with a $4 million base salary. It's a base deal that includes a $1.08 million base salary, $920,000 roster bonus, and $2 million signing bonus. Also, the 4 void years. So $1.6 million cap charge in 2024. The cap number for 2023 is $2.4 million. And then the $2 million in incentives. We've seen a lot of void years, Q. It seems like the Ravens are now fully on board with that. We saw it with Odell, Lamar, now Rock Ya-Sin. And it felt like the Ravens would never do that type of thing. Here we are talking about it for essentially 3 straight deals here. I mean, if the Ravens, they can get a lot more guys under contract because they're using these void years. Obviously, it can be a risk in the later years. But are you a fan of what they're doing with the void years?
I am a fan because it tells you that they know their window is small. And if you get a Super Bowl championship to go along with the 2 you already have, then it validates the finagling of the cap. They're a team that, for years have figured out ways to navigate it. And I think this is, Rock Ya-Sin, he and his agent and the Ravens, they've all figured out how to overcome it.
Yeah, and for what the Ravens have now, you still have a couple of needs where they could definitely sell at a corner. They could go and add a safety. Maybe they do bring back Marcus Peters. Maybe they add a pass rusher, or maybe it's an offensive lineman. But now you have the ability to be super flexible. And I kind of talked about this, Q, where the Ravens are kind of moving. The whole NFL is doing it, honestly. They're moving into this positionless team. It starts with positionless defense, where obviously we saw Kyle Hamilton give them really good snaps. Came in as a safety, but can play a big nickel and did it really well. Trenton Simpson's one of these players. I think you have the inside-outside versatility on the defensive line, where Baltimore loves to move guys all around the field. And even like you're talking about the offense, where outside you can put players either there or on the inside. Offensive linemen can kick inside. They can go outside. Do you like what they're doing here? I feel like they're building a team. Like in 2040, we'll be saying, oh yeah, everybody can play a different position. The quarterback can go and play safety and the offensive lineman can go play receiver. But I think I like what Baltimore is doing here, building up this talent that can play multiple different positions.
So I do like it in principle and somewhat how they apply it. But what I would be leery of, for example, if I'm Trenton Simpson and I am that guy that's balling out, and all of a sudden you're like, well, we're gonna pay you the salary of a weak side linebacker versus a rush in. Like, are you gonna be so nameless that you're gonna affect my money? That's something that I think you got to be really careful of if you're a player. You know what? You're going to categorize me, but when it comes to playing, sure, put me anywhere you want to put me, but you're going to categorize me. For example, if I'm a corner, I'm a corner. Don't get it twisted. If I'm a multifaceted safety, put me down as a multifaceted safety. Don't just limit me and think, well, you're a one-dimensional safety. Don't do that. And I think that can be the unintended consequence of having this nameless position, as you would say.
And I think one area where I like how the Ravens do move guys around. One where I kind of haven't liked how they've managed it is Brandon Stevens. For Brandon Stevens, his situation has been, just a long story short version. Came into college as a running back, transferred over to SMU, moved over to corner, came in the league. The Ravens moved him to safety his rookie year, moved him to more of a corner his second year, and now he's playing safety again, according to John Harbaugh rookie minicamp, now in his 3rd season. And we've seen kind of the other teams, and obviously every team does it differently, and situation is key. But Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins, for example, came in as kind of these really versatile pieces, and the Cardinals moved them around, I think, way too much, and it didn't let them play at a position and just get that down and see. I feel like doing all this moving with Brandon Stevens might stunt his development a little bit. And I don't know how you feel about it, Q, but that's just how I'm feeling about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Again, like you get into a rhythm, you get into an understanding of, your strengths and weaknesses. And so do the coaches feel the same way? Do they feel like they can keep putting you in the right position? And different position coaches, they move from one team to another. You want to make sure that, yeah, if I'm with this team, that this team honors and respects my skill set. At the same time, if I don't have that same respect and I am up for a contract and I'm going to another team, is that team good enough to keep me fresh in their mind as a versatile player, or are they limited by their lack of an imagination? And their lack of imagination hinders my progress in the league and stalls me out, and I don't get to either maximize my dollars and I don't, get to make an impact on the field.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into kind of finding the right place for a player, both from the player's perspective and then from the team's perspective. How can they utilize what the player wants to do, and how does the player feel about moving around in all these roles? But all right, I know the schedule release comes out. It comes out today, but just before we're recording this, obviously Wednesday night, based off of their opponents, again, the teams, the AFC North teams, they play once at home, once on the road. You have at home the Lions, the Rams, the Seahawks, Texans, Colts, Dolphins. Away you have San Francisco, the Cardinals, Jacksonville, Tennessee, the Chargers, and that's that there. Obviously, there's a lot still that has to be done. But before the Ravens end up getting their schedule, how do you feel like it's going to be?
Whew, bro, this is I don't know, the first year in goodness gracious, the Cleveland Browns have lost the offseason Super Bowl, and we are crowning our very own Baltimore Ravens the Super Bowl offseason champions. So now it spills over into what are they going to do? I don't know. I've been saying I don't know since I became a part of the Ravens broadcast team. So what I'm going to say is I don't know. And the saying I don't know, if they stay healthy, this team is going to be a force to reckon with. And if they can stay healthy, absolutely a 13-4 is well within the striking distance, if you will. I think they can take a team like the Rams for granted. I think that they can, stare down Tennessee and let Tennessee squeak one by, or the Lions. Other than that, some of the other big boy teams that they're going to be facing, maybe they don't really care to gear up for San Francisco like they should, or the Seahawks like they should. We'll give them that NFC, but I think the teams that they know are critical to do what they need to do to secure, home field advantage in the playoffs. I think this is a good team.
I think it's a good team, and to be able to, I think, the Ravens are, and I think every organization is like this, where, they'll absolutely play down to a team they're supposed to beat, and then they'll go and they'll play up against the team they're supposed to lose to. It goes that way every single season without fail. So I think they're going to have a good year this year, but you have to take into account, how does it look on paper versus how does it actually play out on the field? So there's still a long way to go. Obviously, the schedule comes out tonight. We'll be live streaming after it comes out, breaking it down. Then tomorrow we'll be talking about the predictions for the Ravens. Well, Q, I appreciate you hopping on today. Thank you so much for doing so. And I'm excited to see how the team shapes up over the course of the rest of the offseason, and then how they actually play on the field together.
This is shaping up to be something really special and cool. I'm just biting my tongue because I've lived it for so long, where we don't want to be Super Bowl offseason champions. We want to wait till the season gets here and let's play some games.
Yep, let's play some games. Let's do it. We will be there, and it's hopefully going to come soon. I know we're in May right now, so a couple months to go, but hopefully the time will go by fast and week one will come, and it won't feel that long that it comes. So thank you again, Q. I appreciate you. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to get back here tomorrow. It is more Ravens talk, and of course, we'll be live streaming later today, so be sure to check that out. So be sure to stay tuned for everything we have coming up, and I'll see you right back here.